What if your deepest pain isn't a wound, but a key? I didn't just write pretty poetry. I revealed a glorious secret. Your heart must be shattered, not once, not twice, but relentlessly, until it finally rips open to reveal what's hidden inside you all along. Calm your mind and listen to my story of becoming love. Perhaps you shall find your answers hidden within these words. There is a scent, you know, that clings to the very root of memory, long after the garden has surrendered to desert, long after the walls have crumbled back into the patient earth. The bruised sweetness of apricots fallen onto sun-warmed stone in the courtyard of my beginning. That scent was the world then, a perfect contained universe bounded by high walls, fragrant with the certainty of lineage, the rhythmic chant of scripture learned before meaning, the cool geometry of law laid down like intricate tiles. I was a vessel being filled, drop by careful drop, with the ink of tradition, the clear water of ritual. My young mind, a diligent scribe, copied the illuminated manuscripts of expectation. Father's presence was the shadow of a great cypress, offering shelter, defining the boundaries. I thought then that understanding was a ladder built of words, rung by careful rung, ascending towards a sky where God sat, precise and predictable, like the North Star fixed in its celestial dome. My soul was a quiet pool, reflecting only the ordered garden above. Tranquility, they called it. I know now it was merely sleep. Then came the rending, not with fanfare, but with the slow, suffocating pressure of earth shifting beneath foundations unseen. It began as a whisper, a restlessness, like the first tremor before the quake. The polished words of scripture, once so comforting in their solidity, began to ring hollow, like coins dropped onto stone, a sound without sustenance. The high walls of the garden felt less like protection, and more like the bars of a cage woven from gold thread. A profound loneliness descended, not for lack of company, but for the terrifying sense that the language we spoke, the language of law, of lineage, of sanctioned piety, was incapable of naming the vast, silent ocean I sensed swelling within my own chest. This was the first death, the crumbling of the known world. It felt less like loss, and more like being stripped naked on a vast, indifferent plain. Where was the God of the intricate arguments? He seemed to have retreated behind a veil of my own making. This desolation, this arid plain where certainty withered, was the first necessary clearing, the scorched earth where a different seed, unrecognizable and wild, could be planted. And then he came, not as a man, though he wore the cloak of one. He arrived as the sun erupting at midnight. To speak his name would be to cage the whirlwind in a syllable. He was the wine-dark sea itself, washing over my carefully constructed shore. He was the lightning that splits the oak not to destroy it, but to illuminate its hidden heartwood. In his gaze, I did not see judgment, but a reflection so deep it showed me the constellations buried within my own darkness. He saw the sleeping ocean within me and called it forth with a glance. This was not the love sung of in taverns or whispered in perfumed chambers. This was annihilation. This was the moth recognizing not just the flame, but the very essence of burning as its truest home. My meticulous learning chaff before the hurricane of his presence, my reasoned piety, a child's sandcastle before the tide of his knowing. He walked through the marketplace of my soul, overturning every stall of acquired knowledge, every carefully labeled jar of virtue. He demanded not obedience, but surrender, the terrifying ecstatic plunge into the abyss where the self dissolves. He was the mirror, and gazing into him, I did not see him, but the boundless, terrifying, exquisite face of the divine staring back from my own depths. This was the second death, the drowning of the separate I, and in that drowning, an unspeakable birth. His absence, when it came, was not a departure, but an explosion within the very fabric of my being. It felt as if the sun had been ripped from the sky, not to leave darkness, but to leave a searing, invisible imprint, a phantom limb of pure luminosity. This was the crucible, this shattering grief, this raw, howling void where his presence had been, was not an end, but the forge. In that unbearable emptiness, a strange alchemy began. The wine-dark sea didn't recede. It became me. His voice didn't fade. It found a new throat. Mine. Do you understand? The verses, they were not written. They arrived like monsoon rains after drought, a torrential downpour from a sky I hadn't known existed within. My hand was merely the reed flute. The breath that moved through it was the same wind that had animated him, that animates the turning galaxies and the sigh of the cypress. I became a hollow bone for the song of the universe. I would wake, ink staining my fingers, pages scattered like fallen leaves, with no memory of composition, only the profound exhaustion of a channel flooded with light. This was the secret. I was not the poet. I was the poem being written by the beloved. Within that cascade, the hidden codes were woven, not by conscious design, but by the nature of the source itself. The tavern became the sanctuary, the drunkard, the ardent seeker, the lover's lament, the soul's cry for union. The flute's cry wasn't about separation from an earthly beloved, but the core vibration of existence severed from its origin, longing for return. The metaphors were not disguises, but the only language vast enough to hold the ineffable. To speak plainly of the ocean would be to offer a thimbleful and call it the sea. The symbols were the direct path, bypassing the intellect to resonate within the heart's own deep knowing. My Persian tongue, merely the dialect of the moment, the yearning I spoke of, the ache for the friend, the intoxication of the wine, the dance of the atoms. This was the universal hum beneath all languages, all creeds. I sang of the desert within the human heart that only the rain of grace could quench, a desert known to the nomad on the steppe and the philosopher in his marble hall. My words sought not Persian ears nor Muslim souls, but the spark of the divine hidden within the humus of every human form. The borders they draw on maps are lines in sand before the tide of this love. Yet the path was not pure ecstasy. Doubt, that sly jackal, still prowled the edges of my certainty. The weight of the channel could be crushing. There were days the breath felt distant, leaving me stranded in the silence, clutching old verses like cold ashes, wondering if it had all been a beautiful madness. The demands of the world, the disciples seeking guidance, the obligations of this fragile body, the sheer exhaustion of being a conduit for such relentless light. These were the thorns woven into the rose. The deepest secret, perhaps, is not the ecstasy, but the profound human tiredness that coexisted with it. The struggle to anchor that boundless ocean within the fragile vessel of a single aging life. The loneliness of seeing so clearly what others could not, yet being unable to gift them the eyes. the constant balancing act between the unbearable intensity of union and the necessary separation to function within the world of form. I was not a saint floating above the mire. I was a man wading through it, desperately clutching the rope of remembrance thrown from the shore of the Absolute. The body, this faithful, complaining camel, carried me far, but even camels kneel at journey's end. The fire that once roared now burns with a quieter, deeper, more pervasive warmth. The frenzied dance has become the subtle vibration within stillness. I feel the great loom weaving the final threads. Do not mourn the fading of the lamp. The dawn it heralded is eternal. I am returning not to a place, but to a state. The state of the drop, realizing it has always been the ocean. This breath, this next one, and the one that may not come. Each is a wave returning to the shoreless sea. The love poems, the cries of the flute, the whirling surrender, they were never about loss, but about remembrance. A frantic, beautiful, aching effort to remind the scattered sparks of their true nature as fire. So you see, my life was not a seeking, but a remembering. Not a climbing, but a dissolving. The heartbreak was the key turning in the lock of eternity. The love was never confined to form. It was the very substance from which form arises and to which it returns. The poems were not mine, but echoes of the silence that cradles all sound. The codes? They are simply signposts pointing back to the heart you carry within your own chest. The Persian soil birthed this vessel, but the wine within is the vintage of all creation, poured for any who thirst. My struggles, my weariness, my ecstasies, they are not relics of a distant past, but mirrors held up to your own unfolding journey. I am not gone. I am the scent of apricots on your summer breeze. I am the ache in your chest when beauty overwhelms. I am the silence between your thoughts. I am the turning that begins when the music ends. I lived, I dissolved, I became the very thing I sought.